You're standing in a well-lit bank lobby holding a legitimate withdrawal slip, but the teller's eyes are wide with unwarranted panic. Sirens wail in the distance, closing in fast. Within minutes, you're in handcuffs, publicly humiliated, but the officers making the arrest have no idea they just detained the president's lead Secret Service agent. Marcus Hale was exhausted, but it was the kind of bone-deep fatigue that only comes from a job well done. In his early 40s, Marcus was a veteran of federal law enforcement, having spent the past decade serving on the Presidential Protective Division of the United States Secret Service. He had spent the past few days awake coordinating the security perimeter for an impromptu diplomatic summit. Now back on American soil and finally off duty, all he wanted to do was close on his dream home in the quiet, affluent suburb of Oak Brook, Illinois. It was a quiet morning. The air was crisp, and Marcus had dressed for comfort: a faded navy blue Georgetown University hoodie, dark athletic sweatpants, and a pair of well-worn running shoes. He didn't look like the man who stood inches behind the commander-in-chief. He looked like any other guy running errands on a day off. But as a tall black man walking into the pristine marble-floored lobby of Heritage Trust Bank, his casual attire was about to become a dangerous liability in the eyes of the staff. Marcus approached the teller window. The bank was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the clicking of keyboards. He pulled a slip of paper from his pocket and slid it across the polished counter along with his Illinois driver's license. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice a calm, practiced baritone. "I need to request a cashier's check for a substantial amount. It's for a house closing this afternoon. The funds should be clear in my primary savings account." The teller, a woman whose name tag read Elena, glanced at the withdrawal slip, then at the amount, and finally up at Marcus. Her smile, previously warm when greeting the elderly woman before him, instantly stiffened into a tight, professional grimace. She looked down at his driver's license, scrutinizing the photo, then looked back at his hoodie. She began typing furiously, her eyes darting between the screen and Marcus. "Mr. Hale, this is a very substantial withdrawal," Elena said, her voice dropping a fraction of an octave, laced with a skepticism she didn't bother to hide. "Can I ask the source of these funds?" "It's a combination of personal savings and the proceeds from the sale of my previous property," Marcus explained patiently. "The wire transfer cleared recently. You should be able to see the deposit history." Elena didn't nod. She just kept typing. "And what exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Hale?" Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his tactical mind was already registering the shift in the room's atmosphere. "I work for the federal government." "The government?" she echoed dryly. She picked up his ID and stood up. "I'm going to need my branch manager to authorize a transaction of this size. Wait right here." She didn't ask, she commanded. Marcus watched as Elena walked over to a glass-walled office in the corner. Inside sat Victor Langford, a man in his late 50s wearing a sharply tailored gray suit. Elena leaned in, speaking quietly but urgently, occasionally shooting brief, nervous glances back at Marcus. Victor Langford's eyes locked onto Marcus. The manager's face tightened. He didn't look at a computer screen to verify Marcus's account, he just looked at Marcus. Marcus had spent a career reading body language. He knew what a threat looked like, and he knew what fear looked like. Right now, he was watching two people manufacture a threat out of their own prejudice. Langford picked up his desk phone. He didn't dial a bank authorization center. He dialed 3 specific digits. 911. Marcus sighed, shifting his weight. "Here we go," he thought. He could have walked out. He could have flashed his credentials right then and there to shut the entire spectacle down. But Marcus was a man of principle. He was a citizen trying to access his own legally obtained money. He hadn't done anything wrong, and he refused to use his federal badge to bypass a situation that an ordinary citizen would be forced to endure. He wanted to see exactly how Heritage Trust Bank treated its customers. A short time passed. The lobby remained eerily quiet. Langford finally emerged from his office, walking over to the teller station with a practiced, hollow smile. "Mr. Hale," Langford said, his tone dripping with condescension, "we are currently running a routine security check on the account. Given the unusual nature of this request and the amount, it takes a bit of time." "There's nothing unusual about withdrawing my own money, Mr. Langford," Marcus said, his voice even, revealing none of his growing frustration. "The funds are fully settled. I have my ID, my debit card, and my social security number for verification. What exactly seems to be the issue?" "It's just bank policy," Langford deflected, his eyes nervously darting toward the front glass doors. "We have to protect our clients from fraudulent activities." "Protect our clients?" Marcus thought. "You don't think I'm the client, you think I'm the fraud?" "I understand protocol," Marcus replied, leaning slightly against the counter, keeping his hands fully visible, a habit ingrained in him for survival. "But I have a closing scheduled. I'd appreciate it if we could expedite the verification." Langford took a step back, maintaining a defensive distance. "We are moving as fast as we can, sir. I'm going to ask you to step back from the counter and have a seat in the waiting area." It wasn't a request, it was an attempt to manage what Langford perceived as a threat. Marcus looked at the manager, then at Elena, who was staring at her keyboard, avoiding eye contact. "I'll stand, thank you," Marcus said calmly. A moment later, the heavy glass doors of the bank swung open. The heavy, rhythmic thud of combat boots echoed across the marble floor. Marcus didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. The local police were here. Officers Harlan Mercer and Jasper Reed of the Oak Brook Police Department entered the bank with the kind of urgent, aggressive energy reserved for an act of robbery. Mercer, the younger of the two, was red in the face, his hand resting instinctively on the butt of his duty weapon. Reed, a heavier, older veteran, flanked him, his thumbs tucked into his utility belt. "Officers, thank God," Langford called out, his voice suddenly pitching an octave higher in feigned distress. He pointed a trembling finger directly at Marcus. "That's him. He's been demanding a large withdrawal. His ID looks fake and he's refusing to leave." Marcus slowly turned around to face the officers. He made sure both of his hands were completely empty and held away from his body at waist height. He knew the statistics. He knew how quickly movements were misinterpreted. In his line of work, he neutralized threats. Today, he was being treated as one. "Sir, step away from the counter," Officer Mercer barked, closing the distance rapidly. "I am the account holder," Marcus stated, his voice projecting clearly across the lobby, calm and authoritative. "My name is Marcus Hale. I am attempting to complete a legal transaction. My verified identification is sitting on that counter." "I said, step away from the counter and put your hands behind your back," Mercer yelled, his adrenaline clearly spiking. Reed moved in from the left. "Don't make this difficult, buddy. Do what the officer says." Marcus took a single slow step back. "Officers, I am fully cooperating, but before you proceed, I need to inform you that I am a federal—" "Shut your mouth," Mercer interrupted, grabbing Marcus's right arm with excessive force, twisting it behind Marcus's back. Marcus's instincts screamed at him to break the hold. With his close-quarters combat training, it would take him seconds to disarm the young officer and put him on the ground, but he forced his body to remain entirely limp. He allowed Mercer to yank his arm up at an uncomfortable angle. "Officer," Marcus said, gritting his teeth slightly against the joint manipulation, "you are making a significant mistake. I strongly advise you to listen to me." "The only one making a mistake is you coming into this town thinking you could pull off a scam like this," Reed sneered as he grabbed Marcus's left arm, slapping a cold pair of steel handcuffs around his wrists. The ratcheting sound of the cuffs locking into place echoed loudly in the now dead silent bank. The few customers in the lobby watched in stunned silence. Some pulled out their phones, hitting record. "Spread your legs," Mercer ordered, kicking the inside of Marcus's ankle hard enough to bruise. Marcus complied, staring straight ahead at the bank manager Langford, who looked incredibly smug. "Enjoy the moment, Victor," Marcus thought coldly. "It's going to be your last day in finance." Mercer began a rapid, aggressive pat-down of Marcus's clothing. He ran his hands down Marcus's sides, checking his pockets. "You got any needles on you? Any weapons?" Mercer asked rhetorically. Then Mercer's hand brushed against the right hip of Marcus's sweatpants underneath the oversized hoodie. He felt the hard, unmistakable shape of a specialized holster. Mercer jumped back as if he had been burned, his hand flying to his own weapon, unholstering it in a flash. "Gun, he's got a gun, Reed, hold him." Chaos erupted. Two bank customers screamed. Elena ducked behind her teller station. Reed shoved Marcus violently, face first against the marble wall, pressing his forearm into the back of Marcus's neck. "Don't move! Do not move!" Reed roared, his previous calm vanishing into sheer panic. Marcus's face was pressed against the cold stone, but his voice remained perfectly steady, cutting through the hysteria like a knife. "It is a Sig Sauer P320. It is holstered. My hands are cuffed behind my back. I am not a threat." Mercer, breathing heavily, reached under the hoodie and yanked the firearm from Marcus's waist. He stepped back, holding the weapon up. "Got it. Suspect is disarmed." "Listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, his tone no longer polite, shifting into the commanding cadence of a man who gave orders to tactical assault teams. "In the inside left breast pocket of my hoodie, there is a black leather case. Officer Reed, I want you to reach in and pull it out. Do it now." "You don't give the orders here, scammer," Reed spat, pressing harder into Marcus's neck. "You're going away for a long time. Armed robbery, fraud." "I didn't ask for money. I asked for a cashier's check from my own account," Marcus corrected him sharply. "And if you don't look in that pocket in the next few seconds, the next people coming through those doors are going to be a federal response team." The utter lack of fear in Marcus's voice finally made Reed pause. The suspect wasn't shaking, he wasn't crying, he wasn't acting erratic, he was talking to them like they were subordinates who had just failed an inspection. Reed glanced at Mercer. "Check his pocket." Mercer holstered his own weapon, approached cautiously, and reached into the left pocket of Marcus's Georgetown hoodie. His fingers closed around a heavy leather wallet. He pulled it out. "Open it," Marcus commanded. Mercer flipped the leather case open. Inside, stamped into the heavy brass, was the unmistakable gold star of the United States Secret Service set above a federal photo identification card that bore Marcus's face. Below his name was his title, Supervisory Special Agent, Presidential Protective Division. Mercer froze. All the color instantly drained from his face. He stared at the badge, then looked up at Marcus, then back at the badge. His brain, clouded by prejudice and adrenaline, refused to compute the information. This is fake, Mercer stammered, his voice cracking. It has to be fake. Marcus slowly turned his head as far as Reed's forearm would allow, locking eyes with the young officer. Officer Mercer, Marcus said softly, the quiet intensity of his voice carrying more danger than a scream. If you think that badge is fake, I invite you to call the field office in Chicago. The number is on the back of the ID. But before you do, you should know that my biometrics are linked to that firearm you just unholstered. The moment it was removed from my person without my thumbprint on the retention mechanism, a silent distress signal was sent to the local field office. You have a short time before this bank is swarming with federal agents. Now take these cuffs off me. Officer Reed froze. The heavy, oppressive weight he had been applying to the back of Marcus's neck instantly vanished. He took a stumbling step backward, his eyes wide and locked onto the gold star, glinting in the harsh fluorescent light of the bank. The silence in the Heritage Trust lobby was absolute, broken only by the ragged breathing of Officer Mercer, who was still holding the Secret Service credentials as if they were a live grenade. Take the cuffs off, Marcus repeated, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. The sheer gravity of his command sent a physical shudder through both local cops. Mercer stuttered, fumbling for his cuff keys. His hands were shaking so violently he dropped the small silver key onto the marble floor. It landed with a sharp clink. Mercer, what are you doing? Victor Langford hissed from his safe distance near the teller counter, oblivious to the reality of the situation. Get him out of here, he's obviously lying. Marcus slowly stood up straight, turning to face Langford while Mercer scrambled on the floor for the key. Mr. Langford, Marcus said, his eyes drilling into the branch manager, you are about to have the worst day of your adult life. Before Langford could fire back an arrogant retort, the front glass windows of the bank vibrated violently. The deep guttural roar of high-performance engines shattered the quiet of the Oakbrook suburb. Through the large plate glass windows, Langford, Elena, and the stunned customers watched as 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans jumped the curb, coming to a screeching, aggressive halt directly in front of the bank's main entrance. They weren't local police cruisers. They had no light bars on the roof, just flashing red and blue strobes embedded in the grills. The doors flew open in perfect, terrifying synchronization. Heavily armed men and women wearing dark tactical vests with USSS and police emblazoned in bright yellow lettering poured out. They moved with the terrifying, lethal precision of operators who guarded the highest office in the land. Federal agents, nobody move, a voice boomed as the heavy bank doors were thrown open. Leading the charge was Special Agent Everett Kane, a barrel-chested man who had served alongside Marcus for years. Kane swept the room with an M4 carbine held at the low-ready position, his tactical gaze instantly locking onto the 2 local cops, and then onto Marcus, who was still in handcuffs. Kane's face morphed from professional intensity to absolute murderous fury. Drop the weapon, Kane roared at Mercer, who was still holding Marcus's unholstered Sig Sauer. Drop it now, or I will put you down. Mercer shrieked, instantly tossing the firearm onto the floor and throwing his hand so high into the air he nearly pulled a muscle. Reed pressed himself against the wall, his hands up, his face drained of all blood. Within seconds, 4 Secret Service agents had swarmed the 2 local officers, kicking their legs apart, stripping them of their duty belts, and forcing them to their knees. Agent Kane marched directly up to Marcus. He holstered his sidearm and pulled out his own set of keys. Marcus, you good? Kane asked, his voice tight with barely controlled rage as he unlocked the steel cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists, his face a mask of calm professionalism. I'm fine, Everett. The response time was solid. We were at the Chicago field office processing paperwork when the alarm hit the system, Kane explained, eyeing the 2 terrified local cops kneeling on the floor. We thought you were taking fire, Marcus. What the hell is this? Marcus turned slowly. He pointed a finger first at Officer Reed, then at Officer Mercer. Unlawful detention, aggravated assault, civil rights violations, and illegal seizure of a federal firearm. He then turned his finger toward the glass-walled office, pointing directly at Victor Langford, and him, filing a false police report and quite possibly wire fraud. Langford's smugness completely evaporated. He looked like a man who had just watched his own obituary print out on a ticker tape. Wire fraud? He squeaked, his voice cracking. I was just following security protocols. He looked suspicious. Marcus walked over to his firearm, which an agent had cleared and placed on a side table. He seamlessly reholstered it, sliding the leather badge case back into his hoodie. He walked slowly toward the teller counter, stopping inches from the glass. Elena the teller was openly sobbing. Suspicious, Marcus repeated, savoring the word. I am a veteran of the United States Secret Service. I possess a top-secret SCI clearance. I guard the President of the United States, but I walk into your bank wearing a hoodie to access my own legally deposited funds, and you bypass your own corporate authorization center to call 911. It was a large amount of, Langford pleaded, stepping backward. You can't arrest me for making a mistake. Actually, Mr. Langford, Marcus said, a dangerous knowing smile finally touching his lips, the Secret Service doesn't just protect the president. We are the primary federal agency responsible for safeguarding the nation's financial infrastructure. Bank fraud is our literal jurisdiction, and while I was standing here letting your officers abuse me, I had a lot of time to think about why you were so desperate to stop me from withdrawing a large sum of fully cleared funds. Marcus turned to Kane. Everett, I want a federal freeze on this specific branch's operations immediately. Get the cyber fraud division on the line. I want a full forensic audit of Victor Langford's localized ledger. Langford's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of Elena's desk to keep from collapsing. The sheer panic in his eyes confirmed Marcus's tactical hunch. The twist wasn't just that Langford was a racist. Langford was a thief. As a veteran investigator, Marcus knew that banking systems were automated. When a large wire transfer cleared from a title company, as Marcus's had from the sale of his previous property, the liquidity was guaranteed by the Federal Reserve. There was absolutely no mechanical reason for a branch manager to intervene, unless the branch's local cash reserves were inexplicably short, or if the manager was manually floating large client deposits to cover bad bets elsewhere. Langford had been using the classic security hold excuse as a smokescreen. He routinely profiled clients he believed lacked the legal resources to fight back, specifically targeting minorities and the elderly, flagging their large transfers for fraud review. While the funds were locked in bureaucratic limbo, Langford was siphoning the interest and temporarily redirecting the principal into a shadow account to cover his own illicit options trading. When a black man in sweatpants asked for a large sum, Langford thought he had an easy mark. He assumed he could intimidate Marcus, delay the withdrawal, and use the cash flow. He assumed wrong. Shortly after, the bank lobby had become a makeshift federal command post. The local Oakbrook chief of police, Elias Crow, arrived on the scene, practically sprinting through the doors. When he saw his two officers disarmed and sitting on the floor, surrounded by heavily armed federal agents, and recognized Marcus's credentials, Chief Crow looked physically ill. Agent Hale, Chief Crow began, sweating profusely, extending a trembling hand. Words cannot express the profound apology I owe you on behalf of my department. These officers acted completely outside of our training and policy. Marcus didn't take the hand. He looked down at Mercer and Reed. Your officers didn't ask for my name. They didn't verify my ID, which was sitting in plain sight on the counter. They escalated immediately to physical violence and drew a weapon on an unarmed, compliant citizen because of the color of my skin. If I wasn't carrying a federal badge today, Chief Crow, I would either be in a jail cell right now or the morgue. Chief Crow swallowed hard, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his forehead. They are stripped of their police powers, effective immediately. They will be suspended without pay, pending a full internal affairs and Department of Justice civil rights investigation. I swear to you, Agent Hale, this will be handled. Oh, I know it will be handled, Marcus said coldly, because the DOJ Civil Rights Division is already on their way. You can give them your statement when they arrive. Across the lobby, an agent's voice rang out from the manager's office. She had plugged her federal decryption terminal directly into Langford's workstation. Agent Hale, you're gonna want to see this. He's got dummy accounts. He's been floating deposits for months. We've got millions in unauthorized redirects. Victor Langford was currently sitting in a rolling office chair, crying into his hands as Agent Kane placed federal zip ties tightly around his wrists. Victor Langford, Kane read the Miranda warning from memory, his voice booming over the sound of Langford's pathetic sobbing. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Marcus watched the scene unfold, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. The fatigue of the recent summit was catching up to him, but a profound sense of justice anchored him. He walked back over to the teller counter. Elena was still sitting there, terrified, refusing to look at him. Elena, Marcus said gently. She flinched, finally looking up, her mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. He told me to flag you. I should have just processed the check. You have a choice in this world about who you take orders from when you know those orders are wrong, Marcus said, his tone devoid of anger but heavy with truth. Do better. He reached across the counter, picked up his Illinois driver's license, and slid it into his pocket. A short time later, the regional vice president of Heritage Trust Bank arrived, escorted by federal agents. Sweating and stammering, he personally printed the cashier's check for the full amount, waiving every conceivable fee, and handed it to Marcus with trembling hands. Marcus walked out of the bank into the bright afternoon sun. The three black Suburbans were still idling, securing the perimeter. Kane walked up beside him, clapping a heavy hand on his shoulder. You still got that house closing today? Kane asked with a grin. Marcus looked at his watch. Yeah, Everett, I do. Want a federal escort to the title company? Kane joked, nodding toward the armored SUVs. Make sure no one else gives you a hard time about your hoodie. Marcus chuckled, a genuine smile finally breaking across his face. No thanks. I think I've had enough drama for my day off. I'm just going to go buy my house. As Marcus Hale drove away, the flashing red and blue lights of the Oakbrook Police Department finally arrived, not to arrest the suspect, but to transport their own disgraced officers and a corrupt bank manager to federal holding. Marcus had walked into the bank a suspect. He walked out having single-handedly dismantled a multi-million-dollar fraud ring and purged a police department of its worst elements, all before closing on his dream home. Did this story of absolute justice make your blood pump? Marcus Hale showed exactly what happens when corrupt authority meets a truly immovable object. No one should ever be judged or profiled based on their appearance. And seeing these arrogant antagonists face instant career-ending karma is incredibly satisfying. If you love this real-life drama and want more intense justice-served stories, smash that like button, share this with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable true stories. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Marcus's shoes?